At the same time, in 2008, the trauma of the housing market had really broad impact. The fact that these financial institutions had created these instruments, these financial instruments, the derivatives, the credit default swaps, really created an international financial crisis. So in the summer and fall of 2008, the capital system in this country was on the brink of collapse. They stepped in under Paulson during the last days of the Bush administration and mounted a massive bailout of the financial sector in this country. It wasn't just the $700 to $800 billion that was given directly by the federal government to these bankers. The Federal Reserve also opened up massive amounts of credit to these financial institutions in this country and around the world. It was also done by the European Central Bank as well. We're looking at the possibility of a $10 to $14 trillion bailout of the financial system in the United States and internationally that's taken place just over the last year and a half to 2 years. Massive amounts of money. Our money, our tax dollars, the money in the Federal Reserve is also our money because it's our savings, it's our pension funds, it's the resources that we've accumulated as working people. All this money has been taken, by these banks and these multinational corporations and these insurance companies and handed over to the banks. And at the same time, since 2007, 8.4 million people in the United States have lost their jobs. And there's no comprehensive public works program that's sponsored by Congress or sponsored by the administration in Washington, D.C. to put people back to work. So this is where we are right now. Now, just briefly, I wanted to review some updated information, and then we can move on to further discussion. But I also want to introduce Sandra Hines, who is here. She had been a victim of predatory lending that lost her home in 2007, and she was a key part of the Moratorium NOW coalition. Sandra, you want to raise your hand? She'll be speaking in a few minutes as well. But just let me say, despite the claims of an economic recovery by the Obama administration, as well as the corporate media, the crisis in home foreclosures, which was instrumental, as I mentioned, in triggering the financial meltdown of 2008, it still remains a major problem, especially in the Latino and African American communities. A recently released study by the Center for Responsible Lending indicates that the rate of home foreclosures are nearly twice as high for the largest nationally oppressed groups in the United States than for whites. So what that means is that Latinos and African Americans have twice the foreclosure rate than the general population. In early 2007, housing prices began to decline rapidly, even though the interest rates and penalties paid on mortgages rose sharply. So despite the fact that our housing values are going down, the penalties and the interest rates on mortgages are going up. Now, during the so-called real estate boom of the 1990s and the first years of the 2000s, the Latino communities, the African American communities were targeted with predatory lending schemes that proved to be disastrous for both communities throughout the United States. They were virtually targeting these communities. They had telemarketing agencies that were calling people's homes all day long, offering people refinancing schemes. They were also offering first-time buyers the ability to buy homes. Many of the borrowers were first-time homeowners who already had, and some who already had mortgages, and some even who had homes that were free and in the clear. People who had homes, they had paid off the mortgages, they owed nothing on their homes, they were also targeted for these refinancing schemes. And they fell prey to these real estate brokers and also these unlicensed salespersons who told them that the housing prices would continue to go up, they would continue to appreciate, and you could always refinance. That was the slogan they were using 2 or 3 years ago. Every television show that you would watch during this time period would have some ad, encouraging people to refinance their homes or to take out a second mortgage on their homes. The impact of this has been devastating on the nationally oppressed families and neighborhoods and working people as a whole throughout the United States. In fact, the full magnitude of the problem has not been fully assessed due to the lack of data on the housing problem and the refusal of both the financial industry and the federal government to provide an accurate assessment of the situation. Consequently, the data that is available can only be considered cautiously since the total magnitude of the crisis is still being revealed to the public. So we still don't have fully the adequate data that we need to really assess what's going on in this country in terms of the housing crisis. Now, in this recent report that was put out by the Center for Responsible Lending, that was entitled Foreclosures by Race and Ethnicity, the Demographics of a Crisis, it states, and I quote, although a number of useful mortgage databases are available, there is no official nationwide publicly available census of completed foreclosures or associated demographic information. In this report, we seek to shed light on the nation's foreclosure crisis by using government and industry data to estimate the number of foreclosures in recent years and their impact by race and ethnicity, unquote. That's from the recent study by the Center for Responsible Lending. They also say that, quote, during the first 3 years of the foreclosure crisis, from January 2007 to the end of 2009, they estimated that 2.5 million foreclosures were completed. The vast majority of these foreclosures were on owner-occupied properties with mortgages that were originated between 2005 and 2008. Based upon the data that is available, the Center for Responsible Lending reports that, quote, the majority, an estimated 56% of families who lost their homes were non-Hispanic and white, but African Americans and Latino families were disproportionately affected relative to their share of mortgage originations. The report goes on further to state that, quote, among recent borrowers, we estimate that nearly 8% of both African American and Latinos have lost their homes to foreclosures compared to 4.5% of whites. So that's what I mentioned earlier. They have a foreclosure rate twice that of whites. The racial and ethnic disparities in these estimated foreclosure rates hold even after controlling for differences in income patterns between demographic groups. So what it's saying is that even for African Americans and Latinos who are in higher income groups, they were still targeted for predatory loans, despite their credit histories, despite their income levels. So we can see clearly that there's definitely a racist factor in this whole crisis and how it developed. Even with these extremely high numbers of home foreclosures, the crisis is far from over. The Mortgage Bankers Association National Delinquency Survey reported that the rate of foreclosure still remained at 4.63%, which is nearly 500% higher than the figures from 1979 until 2006. That's just absolutely amazing that the foreclosure rate has gone up 500% over the last 3 decades. So this is really a national, very serious national crisis. And I'll just close this section, this part with this.